Hey everybody, I'm Megan Fox with pjmedia.com. I'm a columnist. I write columns every day there at PJ Media. I do investigative journalism and also I write opinion columns. And look what I got in the mail today. It's time. Sex and the City by Candace Bushnell. I said I would read to you this book. I've never read it, and we're going to do it. And I even put on my dark lipstick for the occasion. And I actually put makeup on my face for this. And I poured myself a drink that I think makes a lot of sense for this reading. This is a Manhattan. Yum. Tasty. Mm. Got to be careful with the Manhattan, though. I have had a lot of experience with the Manhattan. It is not a drink for sissies. Drink it slowly and also have some water available. All right, I'm at home, so I'll be okay. No one will have to wheel me out of here. All right, so this book is by Candace Bushnell. It is the book that the series Sex and the City is based on. And tonight I'm going to read to you chapter 1. So if you don't have your drinks ready, pause and go and get one and cozy in, and we're going to read together. Okay? Here we go. Chapter 1. My unsentimental education. Love in Manhattan? Don't think so. Here's a Valentine's Day tale. Prepare yourself. An English journalist came to New York. She was attractive and witty, and right away she hooked up with one of New York's typically eligible bachelors. Tim was 42, an investment banker who made about $5 million a year. Must be nice. Are these guys just wandering around New York? Oh, God. For 2 weeks, they kissed, held hands, and then on a warm fall day, he drove her to the house he was building in the Hamptons. They looked at the plans with the architect. I wanted to tell the architect to fill in the railings on the second floor so the children wouldn't fall through, said the journalist. I expected Tim was going to ask me to marry him. On Sunday night, Tim dropped her off at her apartment and reminded her that they had dinner plans for Tuesday. On Tuesday, he called and he said he'd have to take a rain check. When she hadn't heard from him after 2 weeks, she called and told him, "That's an awfully long rain check." He said he would call her later in the week. He never did call, of course. But what interested me was that she couldn't understand what had happened. In England, she explained, meeting the architect would have meant something. Then I realized, of course, she's from London. No one's told her about the end of love in Manhattan. Then I thought, she'll learn. If you guys remember from Sex and the City season 1, episode 1, this was the story that they opened with. So it's almost like verbatim from the book, if I recall correctly, right? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments if you remember this episode, but I remember this, and we never see this person again, but Carrie was narrating this story. All right, continuing on. Welcome to the age of uninnocence. The glittering lights of Manhattan that served as backdrops for Edith Wharton's bodice-heaving trysts are still glowing, but the stage is empty. No one has breakfast at Tiffany's, and no one has affairs to remember. Instead, we have breakfast at 7 a.m. and affairs we try to forget as quickly as possible. How did we get into this mess? Truman Capote understood our 90s dilemma, the dilemma of love versus the deal all too well. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, Holly Golightly and Paul Varjak were faced with restrictions. He was a kept man, and she was a kept woman. But in the end, they surmounted them and chose love over money. That doesn't happen much in Manhattan these days. We are all kept men and women by our jobs, by our apartments, and then some of us by the pecking order at Mortimer's and at the Royalton, by Hampton's beachfront, by front row garden tickets, and we like it that way. Self-protection and closing the deal are paramount. Cupid has flown the coop. Sorry, I read that wrong. Cupid has flown the co-op. That's even funnier. So now you know where the puns come from. When was the last time you heard someone say, I love you, without tagging on the inevitable, if unspoken, as a friend. When was the last time you saw two people gazing into each other's eyes without thinking, yeah, right? When was the last, that sounds like Miranda. When was the last time you heard someone announce, I'm truly, madly in love, without thinking? Just wait until Monday morning. And what turned out to be the hot non Tim Allen Christmas movie, Disclosure, for which 10 or 15 million moviegoers went to see unwarranted, unaffectionate sex between corporate erotomaniacs. Hardly the stuff we like to think about when we think about love, but very much the stuff of the modern Manhattan relationship. That's kind of sad. There's still plenty of sex in Manhattan, but the kind of sex that results in friendship and business deals, not romance. There isn't even that kind of sex in And Just Like That, though. There's none. None at all. None. These days, everyone has friends and colleagues. No one really has lovers, even if they have slept together. Back to the English journalist. After 6 months, some more relationships and a brief affair with a man who used to call her from out of town to tell her that he'd been calling her when he got back, that he'd be calling her when he got back to town and never did. She got smart. Relationships in New York are about detachment, she said. But how do you get attached when you decide you want to? Honey, you leave town. Love at the Bowery Bar, Part 1. It's Friday night at the Bowery Bar. It's snowing outside and buzzing inside. There's the actress from Los Angeles looking delightfully out of place in her vinyl gray jacket and mini skirt, with her gold medallion too tan to escort. There's the actor, singer, and party boy, Donovan Leitch, in a green down jacket and a fuzzy beige hat with ear flaps. There's Francis Ford Coppola at a table with his wife. There's an empty chair at Francis Ford Coppola's table. It's not just empty, it's alluringly, temptingly, tauntingly, provocatively empty. It's so empty that it's more full than any other chair in the place. And then, just when that chair's emptiness threatens to cause a scene, Donovan Leitch sits down for a chat. Everyone in the room is immediately jealous, pissed off. The energy of the room lurches violently. This is romance in New York. The happily married man. Love means having to align yourself with another person. And what if that person turns out to be a liability, said a friend, one of the few people I know who's been happily married for 12 years. And the more you're able to look back, the more you're proven right in hindsight. Then you get further and further away from having a relationship, unless something big comes along to shake you out of it, like your parents dying. New Yorkers build up a total facade that you can't penetrate, he continued. I feel so lucky that things worked out for me early on, because it's so easy not to have a relationship here. It almost becomes impossible to go back. Interesting. That actually reminds me of an article I read a long time ago about how people who get married young stay married longer. And I was married very young. I was married when we were 24, just turned 24. We were both 24. And you do bond because you grow up together. You know, you're not really a grown up at 24. Like, that's not, we thought we were, but you're not. And so you grow up together, and it creates more of like almost a childhood bond. So I agreed with that article. I actually know people who have been together since like third grade. Isn't that insane? The happily sort of married woman. A girlfriend who was married called me up. I don't know how anyone makes relationships work in this town. It's really hard. All the temptations, going out, drinks, drugs, other people. You want to have fun. And if you're a couple, what are you going to do? Sit in your little box of an apartment and stare at each other? When you're alone, it's easier, she said a little wistfully. You can do what you want. You don't have to go home. The Bachelor of Coco Pazzo. Years ago, when my friend Capote Duncan was one of the most eligible bachelors in New York, he dated every woman in town. Back then, we were still romantic enough to believe that some women could get him. He has to fall in love someday, we thought. Everyone has to fall in love. And when he does, it will be with a woman who's beautiful and smart and successful. But then those beautiful and smart and successful women came and went, and he still hadn't fallen in love. We were wrong. Today, Capote sits at dinner with Coco Pazzo, and he says he's ungettable. He doesn't want a relationship, doesn't even want to try, isn't interested in the romantic commitment, doesn't want to hear about the neurosis in somebody else's head. And he tells women that he'll be their friend and they can have sex with him, but that's all there is, and that's all there's ever going to be. And it's fine with him. It doesn't even make him sad anymore the way it used to. Love at the Bowery Bar, Part 2. At my table at the Bowery Bar, there's Parker, 32, a novelist, who writes about relationships that inevitably go wrong. His boyfriend, Roger, Skipper Johnson, an entertainment lawyer. Skipper is 25 and personifies the Gen X dogged disbelief in love. I just don't believe I'll meet the right person and get married, he said. Relationships are too intense. If you believe in love, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed. You just can't trust anyone. People are so corrupted these days. But it's the one ray of hope, Parker protested. You hope it will save you from cynicism. Skipper was having none of it. The world is more fucked up now than it was 25 years ago. I feel pissed off to be born in this generation when all these things are happening to me. Money, AIDS, and relationships, they're all connected. Most people my age don't believe they'll have a secure job. When you're afraid of the financial future, you don't want to make a commitment. I understood his cynicism. Recently, I'd found myself saying I didn't want a relationship because at the end, unless you happened to get married, you were left with nothing. Skipper took a gulp of his drink, which is a good idea. I have no alternatives, he screamed. I wouldn't be in shallow relationships. So I do nothing. I have no sex and no romance. Who needs it? Who needs all these potential problems like disease and pregnancy? I have no problems. No fear of disease, psychopaths, or stalkers. Why not just be with your friends and have real conversations and a good time? I actually know someone like this who has decided he's never dating again. Who sounds exactly like this. It's like, why would I bother? I've been there and done all of that. It's time for that to be over. You're crazy, Parker said. It's not about money. Maybe we can't help each other financially, but maybe we can help each other through something else. Emotions don't cost anything. You have someone to go home to. You have someone in your life. I had a theory that the only place you could find love and romance in New York was in the gay community, that gay men were still friends with extravagance and passion, while straight love had become closeted. I had this theory partly because of all I had read and heard recently about the multimillionaire who left his wife for a younger man and boldly squired his young swain around Manhattan's trendiest restaurants, right in front of the gossip columnists. There, I thought, is a true lover. Parker was also proving my theory. For instance, when Parker and Roger first started seeing each other, Parker got sick. Roger went to his house to cook him dinner and take care of him. That would never happen with a straight guy. What? That's not true. I've actually had that happen. My husband did that for me when we were dating and I got sick and he took care of me. What do you mean that would never happen with a straight guy? She's dating the wrong straight guys. All right. If a straight guy got sick and he just started dating a woman and she wanted to take care of him, he would freak out. He would think that she was trying to wheedle her way into his life and the door would slam shut. I'm trying to, well, maybe the other way around, but like most guys who are interested in you, though, if you got sick, they'd come take care of you or at least bring you some soup. Love is dangerous, Skipper said. If you know it's dangerous, that makes you treasure it and you'll work harder to keep it, Parker said. But relationships are out of your control, Skipper said. You're nuts, Parker said. Roger went to work on Skipper. What about old-fashioned romantics? My friend Carrie jumped in. She knew the breed. Every time a man tells me he's a romantic, I want to scream, she said. All it means is that a man has a romanticized view of you, and as soon as you become real and stop playing into his fantasy, he gets turned off. That's what makes romantics dangerous. Stay away. At that moment, one of those romantics dangerously arrived at the table. A lady's glove. The condom killed romance, but it has made it a lot easier to get laid, said a friend. There's something about using a condom that for women makes it like sex doesn't count. There's no skin-to-skin contact, so they go to bed with you more easily. Ooh, is that true? Scary. Love at the Bowery Bar, Part 3. Barkley, 25, was an artist. Barkley and my friend Carrie had been seeing each other for 8 days, which meant they would go to places and kiss and look into each other's eyes, and it was sweet. With all the 35-year-olds we knew up to their cuffs and polished cynicism, Carrie had thought she might try dating a younger man, one who had not been in New York long enough to become calcified. All right, on a side note, this friend of hers named Carrie is obviously not her. So it's interesting that they chose the name Carrie Bradshaw to be the narrator of this story when there's a Carrie in the story who's one of the friends. We still haven't figured out which friend yet, so we'll see if we can figure out who Carrie is supposed to be. I've never read this, by the way, so this is my first time through. Just like it is yours if you have not read it. Carrie. I lost my place. I should have put my finger there. Where the heck did it go? Oh, yes. They were looking each other in the eyes, kissing all over the city. With all the 35-year-olds we knew up to their cuffs and polished cynicism, Carrie had thought she might try dating a younger man, one who had not been in New York long enough to become calcified. Barkley told Carrie he was a romantic, because I feel it. And he also told Carrie he wanted to adapt Parker's novel into a screenplay. Carrie had offered to introduce them, and that's why Barkley was there at the Bowery Bar that night. But when Barkley showed up, he and Carrie looked at each other and felt nothing. Perhaps because he had sensed the inevitable, Barkley had brought along a date, a strange young girl with glitter on her face. That's awkward. Nevertheless, when Barkley sat down, he said, I totally believe in love. I would be so depressed if I didn't believe in it. People are halves. Love makes everything have more meaning. Yeah, then someone takes it away from you and you're fucked, said Skipper. But you make your own space, said Barkley. Skipper offered his goals: to live in Montana with a satellite dish, a fax machine, and a Range Rover, so you're safe, he said. That sounds like me. Sounds like something I would say. Maybe what you want is wrong, said Parker. Maybe what you want makes you uncomfortable. I want beauty. I have to be with a beautiful woman. I can't help it, Barkley said. That's why a lot of girls I end up going out with are stupid. Skipper and Barkley took out their cell phones. Your phone's too big, said Barkley. Later, Carrie and Barkley went to the tunnel and looked at all the pretty young people and smoked cigarettes and scarfed drinks. Barkley took off with the girl with the glitter on her face, and Carrie went around with Barkley's best friend, Jack. They danced and then slid around in the snow like crazy people trying to find a cab. Carrie couldn't even look at her watch. Barkley called her the next afternoon. What's up, dude? He said. I don't know. You called me. I told you I didn't want a girlfriend. You set yourself up. You knew what I was like. Oh, yeah, right, Carrie wanted to say. I knew that you were a shallow two-bit womanizer, and that's why I wanted to go out with you. But she didn't. I didn't sleep with her. I didn't even kiss her, Barkley said. I don't care. I'll never see her again if you don't want me to. I really don't give a shit. And the scary thing was, she didn't. Then they spent the next 4 hours discussing Barkley's paintings. I could do this all day, every day, Barkley said. This is so much better than sex. So, what's interesting about that is that in the modern, studies that are done on sex and who's having it and who isn't, the young generation who seems completely preoccupied with sex all the time, all the LGBTQ stuff and everything, it turns out that hardly anyone is actually having sex. That married people have the best and the most sex out of everyone. Isn't that funny? It's almost like they talk themselves out of it. Too much thinking. The Great Unpretender. The only thing that's left is work, said Robert, 42, an editor. You've got so much to do. Who has time to be romantic? Robert told a story about how he'd recently been involved with a woman he really liked, but after a month and a half, it was clear that it wasn't going to work out. She put me through all these little tests, like I was supposed to call her on Wednesday to go out on Friday. But on Wednesday, maybe I'd feel like I wanted to kill myself, and God only knows how I'm going to feel on Friday. This is so funny. And it's funny because this comes directly from the rules. Do you remember this book? They actually talked about it in Sex and the City, the rules. Charlotte talked about it and how you can't call him you can never call him and he has to call you, but if he doesn't call you by Wednesday, you can't say yes to a date on Friday or Saturday. I literally did this. I had that book. I used the rules. They totally worked and I got married. Then my husband finds the book. It's so funny. And he comes out of the bathroom or whatever, and he finds the book and he's waving it around and he's going, "Witchcraft! This is witchcraft!" And we have joked about it ever since. It was so funny. He must have read the first 3 chapters and was like, "Wait a minute. This is what she did to me." It wasn't that big of a deal. It was just, playing hard to get. It was like a pep talk on how to play hard to get. And it does work. I'm sorry, but it does. Men don't like to be chased. They like to do the chasing. So you have to let them. And I know that sounds like, gender nonsense, but it's true. I mean, I know in today's day and age, nobody wants to hear about what men like and what men don't like, but men have not changed all that much in not straight men anyway. All right, moving on before I get myself in trouble. And God only knows how I'm going to feel on Friday. She wanted to be with someone who was crazy about her. I understand that, but I can't pretend to feel something I don't. Of course, we're still really good friends, he added. We see each other all the time. We just don't have sex. Narcissus at the Four Seasons. One Sunday night, I went to a charity benefit at the Four Seasons. The theme was Ode to Love. I'm still laughing in my head at my husband, the mental picture of him waving that book around. It really was funny. I think I lost my breath laughing so hard. And luckily he was laughing too, so he was not offended. Sorry. The theme was Ode to Love. Each of the tables was named after a different famous couple. There were Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. Not the 2 famous people that you want to signify love, I don't think. Wasn't Jimmy Baker found with the boys? Was it he was messing around with teenagers or something? Was it Jim Baker? You guys, I don't want to be wrong. Let me know. I've had too much of my Manhattan already. I know he was having some kind of affair. And Narcissus himself, Catherine the Great and her horse. Oh dear God, let's not go there. Michael Jackson and friends. Al D'Amato sat at the Bill and Hillary table. Oh, that's an epic love story right there. Did they have chairs for the rest of the women in that relationship? I'm sorry. Oh, each table featured a centerpiece made up of related items. For instance, at the Tammy Faye Baker table, there were false eyelashes, blue eyeshadow, and lipstick candles. Oh, that's great. Michael Jackson's table had a stuffed gorilla, for Bubbles, and porcelana face cream. Bob Pittman was there. I don't know who Bob Pittman is. Love's not over. Smoking is over, Bob said, grinning, while his wife, Sandy, stood next to him, and I stood behind the indoor foliage, trying to sneak a cigarette. Sandy said she was about to climb a mountain in New Guinea and would be gone for several weeks. I went home alone, but right before I left, someone handed me the jawbone of a horse from the Catherine the Great table. What I want to know is if the Bill and Hillary table had a box of cigars on it. Love at the Bowery Bar, epilogue. Donovan Leitch got up from Francis Ford Coppola's table and came over. Oh, no, he said. I totally believe that love conquers all. Sometimes you just have to give it some space. And that's exactly what's missing in Manhattan. Oh, and by the way, Bob and Sandy are getting divorced. And that's the end of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know how it was for you, because I was pretty excited by this. I actually really enjoyed that. I thought that was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do chapter 2. So stay tuned. Good night, everybody.